My flinching wife avoided my touch for weeks until I reclaimed my life through climbing and forced our marriage to finally confront the truth. You're carrying some kind of disease. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like when I tried to put my arm around my wife last Tuesday night. She actually flinched. Not a subtle shift or a gentle redirect, a full-body flinch, like I was about to hurt her. 3 weeks. That's how long this had been going on. 3 weeks of watching the woman I married treat my touch like it burned her skin. At first, I thought maybe she was stressed about work, going through some phase, or dealing with something she'd eventually share with me. But when I tried to hold her hand during our usual evening walk, she found an excuse to check her phone. When I leaned in for our goodnight kiss, she turned her cheek and mumbled something about being tired. The breaking point came when I walked into the kitchen while she was making coffee. I placed my hands on her shoulders from behind, something I'd done probably 1,000 times in our marriage. She jerked away so hard she nearly knocked over the coffee pot. That's when I knew this wasn't about stress or bad days. "What's going on?" I asked directly. No dancing around it. "You've been avoiding my touch for weeks now." She turned around with that look. You know the one. The look that says I'm being dramatic, reading too much into things, making mountains out of molehills. I haven't been avoiding anything. You're imagining things. Imagining things, right? Because a man doesn't notice when his own wife recoils from his touch like he's some stranger on the street. I stood there, coffee brewing behind her, watching her face for any sign of honesty. Nothing. Just that practiced expression of mild annoyance, like I was bothering her with my concerns about our marriage. "So if I reach for you right now, you won't pull away?" I asked, extending my hand toward her arm. She stepped back before I even made contact, then caught herself and tried to play it off by reaching for a mug from the cabinet. "See? You're being paranoid." Paranoid. That's what we're calling it when a husband notices his wife has built an invisible wall between them. I watched her pour her coffee, her movements careful and calculated to maintain distance. She used to brush against me in this kitchen, steal quick kisses while waiting for the toast to pop up, lean into me while I read the morning news on my phone. Now she moved around me like I was furniture she was trying not to bump into. That evening, I decided to test something. Instead of trying to initiate any physical contact, I simply observed. During dinner, she kept her hands busy with her food, her phone, adjusting her napkin. Anything to avoid the possibility of accidental contact. When we watched TV, she curled up on the far end of the couch, not the middle where she used to rest against my shoulder. The most telling moment came when I got up to get a glass of water. I walked behind the couch, and she tensed, waiting for me to touch her shoulder or run my fingers through her hair like I normally would. When I didn't, she actually relaxed. My own wife was relieved that I hadn't touched her. I stood in the kitchen, glass of water in hand, looking back at her. She was scrolling through her phone, completely absorbed, comfortable again because she knew I wasn't going to try to connect with her physically. The distance between us felt like a canyon, and I was the only one who seemed to notice we were standing on opposite sides. That night, as we got ready for bed, I watched her routine change subtly. She used to brush her teeth next to me at the double sink, our arms occasionally bumping as we went through our nightly ritual. Now she waited until I was done or found reasons to be elsewhere until the bathroom was free. She changed into her pajamas in the walk-in closet instead of the bedroom, door closed. When she finally came to bed, she positioned herself as close to her edge as possible without actually falling off. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing, knowing she was awake too. The space between us on that king-size mattress might as well have been an ocean. I'm not the type of man who begs for attention or chases after someone who's clearly sending a message. But I'm also not the type who pretends everything is fine when it obviously isn't. Something had shifted in my wife, and she was either unwilling or unable to tell me what it was. The next morning, I made a decision. If she wanted space, I'd give her exactly what she was asking for. But I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to remember she was married to me. I had my own life to live, my own happiness to consider. I started making plans. The gym membership I'd been putting off for months suddenly became a priority. Not because I needed to bulk up or prove anything to anyone, but because I needed somewhere to go that wasn't filled with the tension of walking on eggshells around my own wife. I signed up that Thursday morning, right after she left for work without her usual goodbye kiss. That kiss had already disappeared weeks ago. Anyway, funny how quickly you can reclaim parts of yourself when you stop trying to force connection with someone who's clearly checked out. Within a week, I was hitting the gym every morning before work, and again some evenings. Not running away from home, just reclaiming time I used to spend trying to figure out what was wrong with her mood, her day, her attitude toward me. The change was immediate. I slept better, had more energy, and stopped spending my evenings analyzing every micro-expression on her face for clues about what I'd done wrong this time. Because here's the thing, I hadn't done anything wrong. A man doesn't apologize for wanting to touch his own wife. It was during one of those evening workouts that I met someone who reminded me what normal human interaction looked like. She was struggling with the lat pull-down machine, and I offered to help adjust the weight. Simple courtesy. She smiled, said thank you, and we ended up talking for a few minutes about workout routines. Her name was irrelevant. What mattered was how she responded when I handed her a towel she'd dropped. She said thank you, and her hand briefly touched mine as she took it. No flinching, no recoiling, no treating me like I was contaminated. Just normal human contact that didn't require an apology or explanation. We started running into each other regularly, same workout schedule apparently. Conversations were easy, natural. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my day, shared stories about her work. Basic human interaction that I'd forgotten was supposed to feel effortless. When she mentioned struggling with her deadlift form, I offered to spot her. She accepted. No drama, no overanalysis, just two adults helping each other at the gym. Meanwhile, at home, my wife was starting to notice the changes in my routine, not because she suddenly wanted to spend time with me, but because my absence was disrupting her comfortable arrangement, where she could avoid me without having to explain why. "You're never home anymore," she said one evening as I was heading out for my second workout of the day. "I'm giving you the space you obviously want," I replied, grabbing my keys. "Seems to be working out well for both of us." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because what was she going to say? That she missed me, that she wanted me around. Her actions for the past month had made it crystal clear that my presence was more of an obligation than a pleasure for her. The interesting part was watching her try to process this new dynamic. She'd gotten comfortable with me pursuing her attention, trying to solve whatever mysterious problem was causing her to treat me like a stranger. Now that I'd stopped chasing, she didn't quite know how to handle the shift in energy. At the gym, conversations with my new acquaintance were becoming the highlight of my day. Not because I was looking for anything beyond friendship, but because she treated me like a person worth talking to. When I mentioned I was thinking about taking up rock climbing again, something I used to love before marriage consumed all my free time, she got excited about it. "There's an indoor climbing gym about 20 minutes from here," she said, toweling off after her cardio session. "I've been wanting to try it, but didn't want to go alone." The old me would have immediately thought about how my wife would react to me spending time with another woman, even innocently. The new me realized my wife had forfeited her right to have opinions about my social life when she decided physical affection from her husband was something to avoid. "Sounds like a plan," I said. "This Saturday work for you?" She nodded, genuinely pleased. "It's a date, well, not a date, but you know what I mean." I knew exactly what she meant. And for the first time in weeks, I was looking forward to something that didn't involve trying to decode my wife's mood, or walking on eggshells in my own home. That evening, my wife was waiting in the living room when I got home from the gym, not watching TV, not reading, not scrolling through her phone, just sitting there like she wanted to talk. I grabbed a water from the kitchen and sat in the chair across from her, not on the couch where I might accidentally invade her personal space. "We should talk," she said. "About what?" I asked, genuinely curious about what had prompted this sudden desire for communication. She gestured vaguely between us. Whatever's been going on lately." I almost laughed. Whatever's been going on lately, like it was some mysterious phenomenon that had happened to us, rather than her deliberate choice to treat me like I had a contagious disease every time I tried to show affection. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said, taking a sip of water. "You wanted space. I'm giving you space. Problem solved." The look on her face told me this wasn't the response she'd expected. She probably thought I'd jump at the chance to have this conversation, eager to work through whatever issues she'd finally decided to acknowledge existed. But I was done being the only one invested in solving problems I didn't create. Saturday came and I found myself actually excited about something for the first time in months. The rock climbing gym was everything I remembered loving about the sport. Plus, the company made it even better. She was a natural, fearless, in a way that reminded me of who I used to be before I started second-guessing every move I made at home. "You're really good at this," she said as we took a break between routes. How long did you say it's been since you climbed regularly? About 3 years, I admitted, chalking my hands for the next route. Got out of the habit when life got complicated. She nodded like she understood without needing the details. It's easy to lose yourself in other people's expectations. Good thing muscles have memory. The simplicity of that statement hit harder than it should have. When was the last time someone had acknowledged that I might have lost parts of myself at home? We spent 4 hours there, talking between climbs about everything except the obvious tension in my marriage. She told me about her job in marketing, her family, her goals for the year. I found myself sharing stories about my life before marriage consumed every conversation, every decision, every free moment I had. You should definitely keep this up, she said as we packed up to leave. You look happier than when you walked in here. She was right. I felt lighter, more like myself than I had in months, not because I was avoiding my problems, but because I was remembering that I existed as an individual, not just as half of a dysfunctional marriage. The drive home gave me time to think about what she'd said about losing yourself to other people's expectations. How had I gotten to a point where I was apologizing for wanting basic affection from my own wife? When had I started treating her comfort level as more important than my own needs in the relationship? My wife was in the kitchen when I walked in, and for the first time in weeks she actually looked up when I entered the room. Not just a glance, but actual eye contact that lasted more than 2 seconds. "How was your day?" she asked, and there was something different in her tone, less distant, more like she actually wanted to hear the answer. "Good," I said, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. "Went rock climbing. Forgot how much I missed it." She blinked, processing this like I'd just told her I'd taken up skydiving. "Rock climbing? Since when do you rock climb?" The question revealed more than she probably intended. Since when? Since before I married someone who made me feel guilty for having interests that didn't revolve around her comfort zone. "Since always," I said calmly. "I used to climb regularly before we got married. Remember those photos from the trip to Colorado I showed you when we first started dating?" She looked uncomfortable, probably realizing she'd never paid much attention to my life before her. "Oh, right. Who did you go with?" There it was, the real question she wanted to ask, delivered with just enough casualness to pretend it wasn't an interrogation. "Someone from the gym," I said. "Needed a climbing partner and I needed to get back into it. Worked out well for both of us." The silence that followed was interesting. She wanted to ask more but couldn't figure out how without sounding jealous or possessive. Ironic, considering she'd spent the last month treating me like an unwanted roommate. "Maybe next time I could come with you," she offered, and the desperation in her voice was almost palpable. I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in weeks she was nervous, uncertain, trying to find her way back to a connection she'd systematically dismantled. "Rock climbing requires trust," I said simply. "Your partner literally holds your life in their hands. You have to be comfortable with physical contact, communication, working as a team." She got the message. How could she not? We couldn't even share the same couch without her creating distance. The idea of her trusting me to belay her, or me trusting her to catch me if I fell, was almost laughable given our current situation. "Maybe we should start with something smaller," she said, trying to salvage the conversation. "Maybe," I agreed. But we both knew I wasn't committing to anything. That evening, she made an effort to sit closer to me on the couch while we watched TV, not touching, but closer than she'd been in weeks. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean into it either. If she wanted to rebuild what she'd torn down, she was going to have to do more than proximity. The next morning, she was up early making coffee for both of us like she used to. She handed me my mug with a tentative smile, and when our fingers brushed as I took it, she didn't flinch. Progress, I suppose, but too little and possibly too late. My phone buzzed with a text from my climbing partner asking if I wanted to try a different gym next weekend, one with more challenging routes. I texted back yes without hesitation, not bothering to check if my wife was watching. I was done checking her reactions before making decisions about my own life. The explosion came on a Wednesday evening, 2 weeks after I'd started reclaiming my life. I was getting ready to head out for climbing practice when she planted herself between me and the front door, arms crossed. That look on her face that meant she'd been building up to this all day. "We need to talk, right now." I set my gym bag down, not because I was intimidated, but because I'd been waiting for this moment. The moment when she'd finally have to acknowledge what we both knew was happening. "All right, talk. You're never here anymore. You disappear every morning, you're gone most evenings, and when you are here, you act like I'm invisible." The irony was so thick, I could taste it. Interesting perspective, I said, leaning against the wall. Tell me, when exactly did you start wanting me around, because for the past 2 months you've been flinching every time I tried to touch you? Her face flushed. I wasn't flinching. You literally jumped away from me when I put my hands on your shoulders. You turned your head when I tried to kiss you goodnight. You moved to the far side of the bed like I had some disease. I kept my voice level, factual, so forgive me if I find it hard to believe you suddenly miss my company. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because what was she going to say? That I was imagining things? We'd already played that game. Look, she said, switching tactics. Maybe I was going through some things, but that doesn't mean you should just disappear from our marriage. I didn't disappear from our marriage. I stopped begging for scraps of attention from someone who clearly didn't want to give them. I picked up my bag again. There's a difference. So what? You're punishing me now, giving me the silent treatment? I almost laughed. Punishing you by going to the gym, by rock climbing, by having a life outside this house? I shook my head. This isn't punishment. This is me remembering that I'm more than just your husband. I'm an actual person with interests, friendships, and goals that don't revolve around trying to fix whatever's wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us, she said. I set the bag down again, giving her my full attention. When's the last time you touched me voluntarily? And I don't mean obligatory, pecks on the cheek or quick hugs for show. When's the last time you actually wanted physical contact with me? The silence stretched between us. She looked everywhere except at me, trying to come up with an answer that wouldn't prove my point. I knew it, I said quietly. You can't even remember, can you? It's not that simple, she finally said. Things have been stressful and I've been dealing with some personal stuff, and you just decided to check out instead of trying to work through it with me. Personal stuff you couldn't share with your husband. Stress you couldn't talk to me about. But somehow it's my fault that I stopped trying to connect with someone who was actively avoiding connection. I shook my head. You created this distance, not me. So, who is she? There it was. The real reason for this confrontation. Not concern about our marriage, not missing my company. Jealousy over the possibility that someone else might appreciate what she'd been taking for granted. Who is who? I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. The woman you've been spending all this time with. The climbing partner, the gym friend, whatever you want to call her. Her name doesn't matter, I said calmly. What matters is that she treats me like a human being instead of an inconvenience. She doesn't flinch when I hand her something. She doesn't act like conversation with me is a chore. She actually seems to enjoy my company. Are you sleeping with her? The desperation in her voice was almost pathetic. But you know what? That's the wrong question. The right question is why you suddenly care who I spend time with when you've made it clear you don't want to spend time with me yourself. She started crying then, not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but genuine frustration and fear. I don't want to lose you. Then why have you been pushing me away for months? I don't know, she shouted. I don't know, okay? Something changed and I couldn't figure out how to change it back. And then you started pulling away too, and now I feel like I don't know how to fix any of it. Finally, some honesty. Not complete honesty, but at least an admission that there was a problem, and that she knew it. Here's the thing, I said, picking up my bag for the third time. I spent weeks trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, trying to give you space, trying to understand what you needed from me. You gave me nothing, no communication, no explanation, just rejection and denial that there was even a problem. I headed toward the door, then stopped. I'm not having an affair, but I'm also not going to keep begging for attention from someone who acts like touching me is a burden. You want to fix this? Figure out what changed and be ready to talk about it like an adult. Until then, I'm going to keep living my life. The look on her face as I walked out told me everything I needed to know. She was scared, finally realizing that her husband wasn't going to wait around indefinitely while she figured out how to want him again. Good. Fear was a better starting point than indifference. The climbing gym became my sanctuary, not just for the physical challenge, but for the conversations that flowed as naturally as breathing. She had this way of listening that made me remember what it felt like to be heard, not just tolerated. You seem different today, she said as we finished a particularly challenging route. Lighter somehow. Had a conversation with my wife last night. Long overdue. I didn't elaborate, but something in my voice must have conveyed the weight of it. She nodded, understanding without prying. Sometimes the hardest conversations are the most necessary ones. We grabbed coffee after climbing, sitting outside in the late afternoon sun. The conversation drifted from work to travel plans to books we'd read recently, easy topics that reminded me what normal human interaction looked like when it wasn't filtered through months of tension and unspoken resentment. "Can I ask you something?" she said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Shoot, what made you start climbing again? Really?" I considered the question, watching people walk past on the sidewalk. I realized I'd been shrinking myself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. "Climbing reminds me that I'm capable of more than I've been settling for." She smiled at that. "Good answer. We all need reminders sometimes about who we are outside of other people's expectations." When I got home that evening, my wife was waiting in the kitchen with dinner ready, not takeout or something thrown together, but an actual meal she'd cooked, the kind of effort she used to make regularly before everything became complicated. "I thought we could eat together tonight," she said, and there was something vulnerable in her voice that hadn't been there in months. I sat down across from her, noticing she'd actually set the table properly, even lit a candle. "This looks great." We ate in relative silence for a few minutes before she cleared her throat. "I've been thinking about what you said last night, and you were right. About me pushing you away, about not being able to explain why." She set down her fork, meeting my eyes for the first time in the conversation. "I think I was scared. Scared of how good we used to be together, of how much I depended on that feeling. When work got stressful and everything felt overwhelming, I started pulling back from everything, including you, but especially you. Because losing what we had scared me more than losing anything else." It was the most honest she'd been in months. But I found myself analyzing her words, rather than feeling moved by them. Fear of intimacy wasn't an excuse for months of rejection and denial. "So you decided to create distance before I could?" I asked. "I guess so." I know how stupid that sounds now. It doesn't sound stupid. It sounds like something you should have talked to me about instead of just shutting me out. She nodded, tears starting to form. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for making you feel unwanted." The apology was something, but apologies don't erase months of feeling rejected by your own wife. "What now?" I asked. "I want to try again. To be better. To remember what we were like before I messed everything up." I looked at her across the table, seeing glimpses of the woman I'd married underneath the months of distance and excuses. Part of me wanted to reach across and take her hand, to tell her we could fix this and go back to how things used to be. But I wasn't the same man who would have jumped at the chance to smooth things over and pretend nothing had happened. I'd spent too many weeks rediscovering who I was outside of this marriage to just slide back into old patterns. "It's going to take time," I said finally, "and it's going to take more than words. I know, I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "Are you?" "Because I'm not giving up the life I've built over the past month. The gym, the climbing, the friendships I've made. That's not negotiable." Something flickered across her face, the instinct to object, to ask for reassurance, to make demands. But she caught herself. "Of course not. I want you to be happy." "Good. Because I am happy. Happier than I've been in months." The weight of that statement settled between us. I was happy with or without her participation in my life. That was the foundation we'd have to build on if we were going to build anything at all. 6 weeks later, I was loading my climbing gear into the car when my wife appeared beside me in her own workout clothes. "Mind if I join you at the gym today?" she asked, not demanding, not assuming, just asking. "Different kind of workout today," I said, closing the trunk. "Climbing practice with a partner." She nodded, but I could see the question in her eyes. The same woman who'd been my climbing partner for months, who'd helped me remember who I was outside of this marriage. My wife had been working to rebuild trust between us, but that didn't mean she was automatically included in every aspect of my life. "Maybe next time," she said, and I appreciated that she didn't push. The months since our confrontation had been a careful dance of rebuilding, but on completely different terms than before. She'd started therapy to work through whatever fear had made her pull away. I'd kept my gym routine, my climbing schedule, my friendship with someone who'd never made me feel like an inconvenience. At the climbing gym, my partner was already warming up on an easy route. She waved when she saw me, the same easy smile that had reminded me what normal human interaction looked like. "How are things at home?" she asked as we chalked up for our session. "Better, different, but better." I'd been honest with her about my marriage struggles from the beginning, and she'd never made it weird or complicated, just listened, offered perspective when asked, and maintained the kind of friendship that didn't require drama or hidden agendas. "I'm glad. You deserve to be happy." That simple statement hit me the same way it had months ago. Someone who believed I deserved happiness, not someone who treated my happiness like a burden. We spent 2 hours pushing each other on increasingly difficult routes. She'd gotten significantly better over the months, fearless and determined in a way that inspired me to climb harder too. When we finished and grabbed our usual post-workout coffee, I realized how much this friendship had changed my entire perspective on relationships. "I have news," she said, stirring her drink. "I got the promotion I've been working toward. They're transferring me to the Denver office next month." I felt a genuine stab of disappointment, not romantic disappointment, but the loss of someone who'd become an important part of my life during a crucial time. "That's incredible," I said, and meant it. "Denver's got some of the best climbing in the country." "I know. I'm excited." She paused, looking at me. "Seriously, though, I'm going to miss this. Our sessions, the conversations, having someone who gets it. Me too. But this is huge for your career." "It is. And honestly, I think the timing is right. You've got your life back on track. Your marriage is healing. And I've got this amazing opportunity." She smiled. Sometimes good things end at exactly the right time. She was right. What we'd built over these months was exactly what I'd needed when I needed it. A reminder that I was worth someone's time and attention, that normal human connection didn't require walking on eggshells or apologizing for existing. When I got home that evening, my wife was cooking dinner again. It had become her routine, small gestures to show she was investing in us. She looked up when I walked in, and for the first time in months, I saw genuine warmth in her eyes instead of obligation. "How was climbing?" "Good, but she's moving to Denver next month. Got a promotion." My wife's face went through several emotions before settling on something that looked like relief mixed with sympathy. "That's great for her career. You'll miss having a climbing partner, though." "I will. But I'm thinking about joining the climbing club at the gym, meet some new people, try different routes." She nodded, then took a breath like she was preparing for something. "I've been thinking about taking a rock climbing class for beginners. Not to intrude on your thing, but because it looks like something I might actually enjoy." I studied her face for signs of manipulation or attempts to control my activities. What I saw instead was genuine interest and a nervousness that suggested she was afraid I'd reject the idea. "The beginner classes are good," I said. "They focus on safety and basic techniques. You'd probably like it." "Really? You wouldn't mind?" "Why would I mind? It's not like I own rock climbing." She laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in months. "I guess I'm still getting used to this new version of us where we can have separate interests and it's not a threat." "Separate interests make us more interesting to each other," I said. "I'd rather be married to someone who has her own life than someone who's just waiting around for me to entertain her." 3 months later, we were both at the climbing gym, but on different routes with different partners. She'd found her own group of climbing friends, people who matched her skill level and shared her cautious approach to new challenges. I joined the advanced group, pushing myself on routes that would have terrified the old version of me. Sometimes we'd grab coffee together afterward, sharing stories about our climbs, our friends, our separate adventures. It felt like dating again, but better. Like two complete people choosing to share their lives instead of two incomplete people trying to fill each other's gaps. My wife had learned to reach for me without hesitation, and I'd learned to maintain my own identity within our marriage. We'd built something stronger than what we'd had before, founded on mutual respect instead of dependency. The man who once begged for scraps of attention had created his own space and invited her to join him there. The difference was everything. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.